Any questions?
Rumpa just mentioned about Queen Malika that talk about we love self, we love self better than, well, basically it's the self that is the most love. And what we are trying to do now is actually try to detach. It's actually very difficult and uphill battle that we are facing in order to go to non-self, isn't it? How are we going to break that journey down to get closer to the non-self?
Okay, to get to non-self, first you have to develop a healthy sense of self. And you have to realize self is not so much a thing, it's an activity that we do. We identify with some things and don't identify with others. Which means that we're already doing selfing and not selfing already. Like right now, this is my spittoon, but when I leave here, it's not going to be my spittoon anymore. It's not self. But as long as I'm using it, as long as it has some purpose to me, I can identify with it as being me or mine. And when I no longer have any use for it, then I can let it go. And we do this all the time. So what the Buddha is trying to do is to get us to have a healthier sense of self and a healthy sense of not self. And we work on developing a healthy sense of self by practicing the Dharma and telling ourselves that, one, we're competent to do this, we can do this. You need that healthy sense of self, that you're capable. Secondly, that we're going to benefit from this. There's a passage where the Buddha tells the monks, let go of whatever is not yours, it will be for your long-term welfare and happiness. So we're letting go for the sake of our happiness. So it's not like we're denying that there's any self there at all, it's just we're learning how to disidentify with things that are getting in the way of true happiness. And then finally there's the self that's watching over the other selves. It's like we have a whole barn full of selves. All kinds of different animals. We have to train them so that they will actually behave properly and help us. As for the selves that we can't train at all, you just put them out to pasture. That's how you go about it. And finally you get to the point where you realize your sense of self and your sense of not-self are strategies. What to identify with that will lead to my happiness? What can I disidentify that will lead to my happiness? And finally you get to the ultimate happiness. You don't need either self or not self anymore. So you put them down. Okay. No, but so don't drop yourself before it's just learn which of your many selves do you want to identify with for the sake of the path, and develop those. It's a healthy desire. And so you identify the selves that are helping your healthy desires, you identify with them for the time being. Okay. We're quiet today. You're running out of questions?
In the transition between the jhanas, I often read that, I haven't had it, I just read it, that with the fading of this, we enter that, and with the fading of that, we enter the next. Is there a better explanation of the fading?
Fading? Well, basically, it happens either two ways. One, in which it just kind of drops away on its own. It drops away on its own. You're trying to get the mind as still as possible, and you realize that this particular mental activity is a disturbance, so you just drop it, without being really conscious of what you're doing. It's just kind of instinctive. Other times, you actually have to make up your mind. Okay, I'm holding on to this thing. Like the voice inside that's always talking to yourself. that's going to be sometimes that's difficult to let go of. You have to say, okay, I'm going to let that go. I'll replace it just with a perception of breath, 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 breath. No commentary, no discussion. Just stay with that perception. So either it's conscious or unconscious, but it can happen either way.
พ่อจะต้องหนูจะถามเป็นภาษาไทย
ได้
หนูมีแมวแล้วก็พ่อของหนูเป็นไข้แล้วเป็นครับแมวเขาก็ตายแต่ยังไม่ตายคือหนูต้องตัดสินใจให้หมอฉีดยาให้เขาตายหนูไม่รู้จะถามคำถามอะไรแต่หนูแค่อยากจะฟังคำอะไรที่ทำช่วยให้หนูรู้สึกดีขึ้น
ก็ถ้าหากว่าเราส่วนมากเขาจะบอกว่าให้มันไปเพราะมันจะได้หมดทุกข์ใช่ไหมฮะทีนี้เราก็ไม่รู้มันจะไปที่ไหนตราบใดที่มันอยู่เราก็ให้ความรักกับมันถึงมันจะทรมานแต่บางทีมันถ้ามันรู้ว่าเจ้าของมันฆ่ามันก็ยิ่งใจหายเลย
เพราะวันนั้นตั้งแต่หนูมีพระรัตนตรัยเป็นที่พึ่งหนูก็ไม่คิดที่จะฆ่าไปแต่ว่าหนูต้องฆ่าสิ่งที่หนูรัก
ก็บอกว่าไม่ต้องฆ่ามันบอกกลับไปที่บ้านรักษาไว้
ไม่ทันแล้วค่ะเขาต้องไปเพราะเขาเป็นคือเขาเป็นเซอร์เบียหนูต้องตัดสินใจเมื่อวานให้หมอฉีดยาเขาเพราะว่าเขาต้องขึ้นล่างโดนทับหนูเลยรู้สึกแย่
ก็แผ่ให้ทำบุญทำกุศลแล้วก็แผ่ให้เขาอุทิศให้เขาไปเกิดที่ไหนก็ให้พ้นจากความเป็นแมวกันแล้วกัน
เหมือนกันเลยมันแค่เห็นภาพนั้นอยู่ต่อหน้าต่อตาค่ะก็เลยรู้สึกแย่มากๆ
ก็ถ้าว่ากรรมของสัตว์
กรรมของหนูด้วยไหมคะ
ตัวนี้เป็นกรรมของเราใช่
สามีเยอะแล้วภรรยาจะต้องสั่งฆ่าก็เลยรู้สึกแย่
ก็บอกสามีว่าให้สามีสั่งกันแล้วกัน
ก็แย่พอๆกันแย่พอๆกัน
ถ้าสั่งแล้วก็อย่างที่ว่าก็ต้องทำบุญทำกุศลต้องแผ่ให้เขาอุทิศให้เขาแล้วบอกเขาด้วยอย่ากลับมาอาฆาตนะ
หวังว่าแต่คุณก็ยินดีรับทุกอย่างหนูก็ไม่เคยตีเขาเลยหนูก็บอกว่าถ้าเมื่อใดที่ต้องการให้หนูชดใช้หนูจะชดใช้
แค่นี้
คุณที่เราทำจริงนะคะทานศีลภาวนากับบุญที่เราแผ่ไปให้คนที่เราตั้งใจหรือว่าสิ่งที่เราตั้งใจเนี่ยมันได้ประมาณสักกี่เปอร์เซ็นต์
มันถ้าพ่อเฟื่องเคยเรียกว่าหุ้นลมคือที่เขาได้ตรงที่ว่าเขาอนุโมทนาด้วยก็ไม่ใช่ว่าเป็นสิ่งของที่เราจะยกไปให้เขาต้องเห็นความดีของเราแล้วก็เห็นดีด้วยอนุโมทนาด้วยนั่นแหละที่อนุโมทนาเป็นบุญของเขาทีนี้มันจะที่เขาอนุโมทนามันจะมากน้อยแค่ไหนมันอยู่ที่เขาเราทำแทนเขาไม่ได้
แล้วถ้าเกิดเพราะว่าเวลาที่ท่านยะถาสักดิ์ดิฉันก็แผ่ส่วนกุศลให้กับบรรพบุรุษภรรยาทีนี้ถ้าเขาไม่ได้มาอนุโมทนาเขาก็จะไม่ได้ถึงแม้ว่าเขาจะอยู่ต่างศาสนาถ้าเขายินดีเขาก็ยังจะได้
ไปรับใช่บางทีศาสนาเดียวกันไม่รับนะคนละศาสนามันกลับรับ
แล้วถ้าเกิดเขาไม่ได้มาอนุโมทนาเขาก็จะไม่ได้รับ
ไม่รับ ใช่ บางทีศาสนาเดียวกันไม่รับนะคนละศาสนามันกลับรับ
แล้วถ้าเกิดเขาไม่ได้มาอนุโมทนาเขาก็จะไม่ได้รับ
หนูต้องตัดสินใจ
The question is about dedicating merit and how much merit the people you dedicate it to, how much they get. And it really depends on them. The extent to which they approve of what you're doing, that's their merit. There was a case in Thailand. Ajahn Fuang was invited to teach at a monastery in Bangkok. And they had this empty building that they had him stay in. Well, the top story was empty. The bottom story had this monk living there who was engaging in the black market trade in Buddha images. And he didn't want anybody else in that part of the monastery at that time, because the traders would come in at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m. And most people would be asleep at that time, but he knew that Ajahn Fuang was a meditating monk, and meditating monks tend to be awake at 2, 3, 4 a.m. So he did everything he could to get rid of Ajahn Fuang. And eventually Ajahn Fuang left, started the monastery in Rayong, and soon after he left, this monk was found stabbed to death in his apartment. Somebody had they knew where the money was, and so they came in to get the money. And then a couple years later, Ajahn Fuang was invited back to the same place to teach meditation again. And the people who came to meditate with him, many of them had never heard this story before, but they would sit and meditate and say, "There's this bloody monk wandering around the building." And Ajahn Fuang would always say, "Okay, dedicate the merit of your meditation to him." He'd sit there and, "He won't take it." And carry a grudge past the grave. So there are cases where you dedicate merit and they don't want it.
นมัสการเจ้าค่ะหลวงพ่อก็มีคำถามอีกเหมือนเดิมเจ้าค่ะก็คือตอนนี้โยมแอนนะคะก็รู้สึกไม่สบายออกร้อนออกลมทุรนทุรายในร่างกายไม่ว่าจะไปไหนอยู่ที่ไหนก็ทรมานเหลือเกินแล้วก็เรื่องกังวลอยู่นั่นแหละแล้วก็คงไม่จบสักทีนึงแล้วก็ไปหาหมอหมอก็ให้ยามาทานแล้วก็ดีขึ้นจากอาการกินไม่ได้นอนไม่หลับที่นี้พอร่างกายกินไม่ได้ไม่หลับก็อ่อนแอร่างกายก็อ่อนแอทุรนทุรายใช่ไหมคะก็เลยอยากมาถามหลวงพ่อนี่แหละว่าไม่ทราบว่าจะทำอย่างไรดีถึงจะเบาบางในการทุกข์ทรมานในร่างกายที่จิตใจนี้ได้
เรื่องร่างกายนั้นก็ต้องทิ้งไว้ก่อนเอาจิตใจสำคัญทำไมใจของเราต้องเข้มแข็งแสดงว่า
จะให้ทำยังไงถึงจะจิตใจเข้มแข็ง
ก็บอกกับตัวเองว่าฉันไม่มีอะไรนอกจากกำลังใจของเราก็ต้องหากำลังใจสร้างให้มันมีขึ้นมาอย่างที่ว่าแผ่เมตตา
ไม่ว่าร่างกายหรือจิตใจอ่อนแอ
ไม่ได้ต้องมีอะไรสักอย่างในใจของเราต้องเข้มแข็ง
กลัวไปหมดกังวลไปหมดใช่ไหม
ก็บอกว่าต้องต่อสู้กับไอ้ความเครียดที่กังวลเพราะไอ้กังวลนี่มันก็มาทำลายเราไม่ใช่เพื่อนของเรามันกำลังทำลายตัวเองเรานึกเมตตาตนแล้วเมตตาผู้อื่นนั่นเป็นหลักของเรายึดไว้ร่างกายจะเป็นยังไงบอกว่าช่างหัวมันฉันจะเอาใจของเราให้ดีก็แล้วกันต้องมีสักจุดหนึ่งในจิตใจของเราที่เข้มแข็งได้ถึงเป็นฝ่ายเล็กๆก็พยายามรักษาไว้แล้วมันจะค่อยขยายขึ้นมาต้องอดทน
แล้วทำยังไงจิตใจถึงจะเข้มแข็ง
นั่นแหละเริ่มจากเล็กๆน้อยๆให้มันเข้มแข็งขึ้นมาทีละน้อยที่เราบอกว่าไม่ไหวมันนั่นแหละทำลายตัวเอง
ใช่เจ้าค่ะ
บอกว่าไหวต้องไหว
แล้วพอคิดแล้วข้าวก็ไม่อยากกินอะไรเลย
ช่างหัวมันไม่ต้องให้มันกินเอาใจของเราดีก็แล้วกันก็มีอย่างเดียวต้องเอากำลังใจสักจุดใดจุดหนึ่งที่เรามีแรงพอที่จะมาบนได้เราก็เอาแรงนี่แหละมาคิดเป็นขอให้สัตว์ทั้งหลายมีความสุข
คิดว่าการมาถือศีล ภาวนานี้เรามีต้องข้อไหนบ้างเจ้าค่ะที่จะต้องงด
ในศีลนะฮะ
คือศีล 5คือศีล 8มีข้ออะไรบ้าง
ก็อย่าไปฆ่าสัตว์อย่าไปลักทรัพย์อย่าไปประพฤติผิดในกามอย่าไปโกหกใครแล้วก็อย่าดื่มสุรานั่นแหละศีล 5
อย่าง
ฮะ
ถูกต้องผู้ชายก็ไม่ได้
ถ้าเป็นศีล 8อย่าไปถูกต้อง
ไม่ได้
ถ้าเป็นศีล 8อย่า
ศีล 8ไม่ได้
ศีล 5ได้ได้นั่นสิเรามีแรงบนก็เอาแรงบนนี่แหละมันแผ่เมตตาเรามีแรงบนได้ที่บนอยู่นี่แหละเราแสดงว่ายังมีแรงใช่ไหมฮะ
พอเมื่อเช้านี้ไม่มีเลย
นี่เนี่ยมันเราพอบนได้ใช่ไหมฮะเอาแรงนั่นแหละมันแผ่เมตตาก็นึกขอให้สรรพสัตว์ทั้งหลายเริ่มด้วยข้าพเจ้าขอให้มีความสุขอย่าสร้างความชั่วคิดแค่นี้เกิดคิดแล้วขยายให้มันครอบโลก
She wants to ask why whenever she wants to chant, she feels sleepy.
Okay. Because you want to do something else. Okay. Tell yourself that if I chant, then I'll get to do what I want. If there's something else that I want, I have to chant first. Then I'll get what I want. Bribe yourself. Oh.
Ajahn, I was under the understanding that when we send marriage out, it's only to do a connection because our relatives can receive it. That total stranger can't receive.
No. Anybody who knows you're doing this and approves, that's if they get the merit. Because, as the Buddha said, there have to be people who, in a position where they can actually know that you're doing this. Now, hungry ghosts know this, and sometimes devas know this. And so, if they know that they're doing good, you're doing good, and you're thinking of them, makes them happy, that's their merit. And be total strangers. It's like you turn on your radio, and it's not only your relatives get to hear the radio.
The sort of thought that we dedicate our marriage to our loved ones and then we say their names. So you don't really need to say that.
No, you say anybody who's around who approves of what I've been doing, I'm dedicating my merit to you. Yeah, all beings. But if you do make it a little bit more specific to some people you know and love, they might appreciate it more.
It's special.
Yeah, you have your special group, and then you have everybody. Because the image they like to use is of lighting candles. You've got a lit candle. Other people are holding candles that are not lit. You light their candles. And it's not like the flame of your candle gets diminished. And everything gets brighter.
Because I've been doing that since learning that it says you dedicate it to your loved ones and you say their names. And so now it's just all beings.
Yeah, all beings, anybody. Yes.
Just on the subject on dedicating marriage, if one's to dedicate marriage to the enemies, those who have jealousy, hatred, vengeance towards, let's say, me, and if I dedicate marriage to them, and based on the story that you just mentioned, if they do not accept that they do have grudges, then they're not going to have they're not going to receive it.
No.
Okay. Does that mean that I still have to continue dedicate marriage, or should I just stop it and and channel this merit to someone unknown, like to
Well, keep on dedicating. Are we talking about people who are still alive?
yes.
Okay, now when you're talking about people who are still alive, you spread thoughts of goodwill. Dedicating merit is for those who have died, because they're in a position where that's their food basically. Now, for people who are alive, you spread goodwill.
Goodwill.
Mm-hmm. And whether they know or don't know, you're creating a better atmosphere around you. And sometimes they don't realize that they're actually creating a better atmosphere in the relationship coming from your part. Now, they may be resistant, and you say, okay, I must have some really bad karma with these people. But you never know who's going to sense it. And it just creates a better atmosphere around you. It also means that when you have dealings with them, you can trust yourself more. And also you'll be sending off a better energy. There was an experiment they did one time. They wired up these couples, and they were measuring their sweat, they're measuring their heartbeat, they're measuring all kinds of physical things, and they were taking a video of them at the same time. And they were then asked a question about some little minor irritant in their relationship. And to see, they're sort of measuring what was happening as they would discuss this minor irritant. And it turns out that the sweat measurement and the heartbeat measurement, those were just to distract the people. What they were really interested in looking at was the micro expressions. You slow down a video, and you see these little tiny expressions going across people's faces. And we may not be conscious of them, but we do pick them up. And they discovered that in any relationship where there was a micro expression of contempt, that relationship was not going to last long. And the contempt comes because it's the feeling you actually have, but then you're trying to mask it. Whereas if you say, I'm going to go into this with as much goodwill as I can, that changes your micro expressions. So you're physically you're reacting in a different way to that person. Mentally you're reacting in a different way to that person. Creates a better atmosphere. Now, the Buddha doesn't say that every relationship can reach reconciliation, though. They have examples in the canon where, say, you have a split in the Sangha, and both sides have decided, okay, we want to patch up. Well, you have to get into asking, okay, what was the original motivation for the split? And if it turns out that either side had a bad motivation, they knew what they were saying was wrong, they just wanted to have the split to begin with, the Buddha said you cannot have a reconciliation. There's some things that would just destroy a relationship, so you don't even try to patch it up. You just say, got to go our separate ways. And so if you're going to have a reconciliation, you have to both sides have to be willing to sit down and say, okay, we're going to work on this relationship. See who did what wrong, admit the mistakes, and then say that we're not going to repeat those mistakes. If you can't do that, you say, well, in that case, I just have to forgive the other person. You can do that unilaterally without their being involved. But it's not the case that every relationship can be reconciled. It's part of life.
โยมได้ฝึกอุปสมาธิมาเกือบปีนึงแล้วโยมได้เห็นถึงความสงบและความอิ่มเอมใจที่ได้รับและความสุขกับการนั่งสมาธิและฝึกนะคะแล้วก็จากเมื่อก่อนที่เป็น depression เป็นป่วยเยอะค่ะสุขภาพดีขึ้นมากแล้วทีนี้โยมอยากจะสิ่งที่เราได้รับเนี่ยมีค่ามากๆโยมก็อยากให้คนสามีของโยมค่ะเวลาเขาทุกข์ใจหรืออะไรโยมอยากจะช่วยเขาบ้างแต่ยังหาวิธีการที่จะให้เขาได้
สามีเป็นคนไทยด้วยฝรั่งคนฝรั่ง
ออสเตรเลียตอนนี้โยมก็เลยจะคิดเกมให้เขาเล่นว่าถ้าสมมติว่ายูสามารถหายใจเข้าหายใจออกสัก5 ครั้งโดยที่ไม่คิดอะไรเนี่ยยูจะทำได้ไหมให้ก็พยายามจะให้เขาทำแบบนี้เพื่อการมีวิธีเล็กๆน้อยๆเริ่มต้นที่ให้โยมไปช่วยเขาได้
ก็ทางว่าทุกข์ใจบอกว่าให้วางสักหน่อยหนึ่งใจของเราต้องพักก่อนจึงค่อยคิดออกได้ แล้วก็บอกให้พักแล้วก็หายใจให้มันสบายๆที่สุด สัก5 นาทีลองดูสิแล้วจากนั้นก็มีปัญหาอะไรที่คิดไม่ตกบอกว่าให้พักแล้วก็หายใจยาวๆสบายๆพอจบ5 นาทีแล้วก็คิดใหม่บางทีความคิดก็จะโปร่งขึ้นมาเอานี่ก่อน
เพราะว่าโยมเห็นถึงสิ่งที่โยมได้รับอะค่ะเพราะเมื่อก่อนโยมเคยทุกข์มากทุกข์แบบต้องหาหมอต้องกินยาเยอะเข้าเลยแต่โยมได้ยาฝึกมา1 ปีที่วัด
แล้วบอกสามีด้วยไม่ต้องเป็นพุทธโดยซ้ำใครก็ทำได้
เขาก็มาวัดวันนี้เขาก็มาส่งโยมแต่เขาก็ไปทำงานต่อเขาก็มาวัดอยู่เหมือนกันแต่
ก็บอกเขานี่ถ้ามีปัญหาอะไรที่คิดไม่ออกก็ให้พักแล้วก็อยู่กับลมหายใจให้มันสบายๆให้ใจของเราได้พักสัก5 นาทีด้วยความสบายจากนั้นก็คิดใหม่
Which part of canon is the thing about reconciliation?
It's in the section. It's in the Vinaya. It's in the monks' rules. It's in an area called the Kandakas. The Kandakas. Yeah. You can look in. There's a book called the Buddhist Monastic Code, and it has a section on schism. And in that section, it talks about the rules about trying to patch up a schism.
So it's not possible to make reconciliation in every case?
Not in every case, no. If an easier place to look at, there's an article I wrote one time called Reconciliation, Right and Wrong. You go on to dhammatalks.org and type that in the search box, Reconciliation, Right and Wrong, and that essay will come up. That'll explain it. Our big question askers are gone.
Ven.Ajahn, with all this reconciliation and schisms, that's more the monk's side of the world. It's nothing to do with us lay people.
No, but you can take a lesson from that, in which you realize there are some things that you just cannot have a reconciliation. Because reconciliation takes, both sides have to sit down and it's okay, I admit that I did this wrong, and you admit that you did that wrong. And you have to sit down with an attitude of respect for both sides. Both sides have to want the reconciliation. Now sometimes you don't get that. One side wants it, but the other side doesn't want it. Which you have to say, okay, I just forgive you, but no reconciliation.
But once something is done, and the karma is already set,
Yeah.
there's no way we can actually negate this.
You don't negate the karma, but what you can say is someone says, okay, I did something wrong, I admit that it's wrong, and I really do want to try to avoid doing that again. I mean, this is how husbands and wives can continue to live with each other.
But it won't completely, how do you say this? It still has a residue.
Well, there may be a residue, but at the same time, sometimes you've had a relationship where there was some misunderstanding and you went through all that effort to clear it up. That becomes a stronger relationship because both sides had to show, okay, I'm willing to work on this. So there are cases where there was a problem, but as you solve the problem, the relationship gets stronger.
But the karma doesn't go away.
Oh, the karma doesn't go away. That's karma. But the fact that you strived for a reconciliation, that's good karma now.
I've got a question if no one is asking. In the Theravadan belief that Buddha teaches that we need to escape the life and death, and we need to cultivate so that we can escape the life and death. So correct me if I'm wrong. So metaphorically speaking, does that mean that you don't get to be reborn as a human, but born in a realm that's in the spiritual realm? Is that what it means?
You stop getting reborn entirely.
Then where does the consciousness or awareness stays or hang around?
It doesn't have a place.
It doesn't have a place.
Yeah. But it's released everywhere.
It's everywhere.
It's released everywhere. In other words, it's not stuck anywhere. And we're used to living in space and time. This is something outside of space, outside of time, which means it doesn't have a location. But you can't say that it exists or doesn't exist or both or neither, because it's undefined.
So there's no identity anymore.
There's no identity.
So you're pretty much everywhere, and it's an awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Can that consciousness come back, and like in the Mahayana, it's called the Bodhisattva, where they come back and help the human to evolve to the next consciousness?
Usually before they die, awakened people help an awful lot. I mean, it's like you just work on your own thing and you say, to hell with the rest of the world. In order to work on your own mind, you have to have a lot of generosity and a lot of virtue and a lot of compassion. And then you show, and your ultimate compassion is just, okay, this is the way out. This is the way to true happiness. My vision of the Bodhisattva ideal for the Mahayana is you've got a movie theater on fire, and there's an exit, and you've got two Bodhisattvas at the door. And one of them is saying, you go first. And the other is saying, no, you go first. Everybody's going to die. If you get out, that allows other people to get out too. But the image the Buddha gives of this awareness, he says it's like a light beam that doesn't land anywhere. You can't see it, but that doesn't mean it's not there. I mean, the only reason we know that there's light out in outer space is, say, the moon is in the way. The moon picks up the rays from the sun and reflects them back. But even in the areas where you look up where it's dark, there's still rays of light going up there, but there's nothing to reflect it. That's the image the Buddha gives.
พระอาจารย์เจ้าคะบางครั้งโยมนั่งสมาธิตอนนี้โยมฝึกนั่งสมาธิแล้วก็บางครั้งเนี่ยนะคะโยมก็นั่งแล้วก็มันไม่มีลมหายใจไม่มีอะไรเลยค่ะมันรู้สึกว่าลมหายใจก็ขาดไปและบางครั้งนั่งสมาธิไปเมื่อก่อนที่สุดแรกๆพอวูบแล้วก็ล้มหลับไปเลยอะไรอย่างเงี้ยแต่ตอนหลังมานี่นะคะพอนั่งสมาธิได้บางครั้งเนี่ยมีอาการวูบแต่ว่าหลังจากนั้นก็จะสว่างแบบสว่างจ้าไปหมดอะค่ะสว่างจ้าในความรู้สึกนะคะแล้วโยมไม่รู้ว่าโยมมาถูกทางทำได้ถูกต้องหรือยัง
ก็พยายามทำความรู้สึกของเราให้มันครอบตัวของเราให้หมดถ้าร่างกายหายไปก็บอกร่างกายอยู่ที่ไหนกลับมาอยู่กับร่างกายอย่าไปออกไปวันนี้ออกจากร่างกายแต่ความสบายให้มันแผ่ให้มันทั่วตัวรับรู้ทั่วตัวลมนิ่งก็รู้ว่าลมนิ่งแต่ต้องรู้กายของเรารู้กาย
เพราะว่าตอนแรกโยมกลัวมากเลยลมหายใจก็หายไปอะไรก็หายไปโยมก็ไม่รู้จะทำยังไงต่อ
ก็นึกว่าหัวอยู่ตรงไหนมือเท้าอยู่ตรงไหนก็รักษาไว้
ก็จากนั้นโยมก็ให้อยู่ในความสงบตรงนั้นก่อน
ใช่
แล้วไปแล้วก็พิจารณา
ก็พยายามก็รักษาความสงบไว้ก่อนมันถึงรู้สึกว่ามันมั่นคงพอแล้วก็จึงค่อยพิจารณาในร่างกายของเรามีอะไรบ้าง
แล้วก็สิ่งที่บางครั้งที่โยมเห็นแสงสว่างกว่าพระอาทิตย์สว่างกว่าทุกสิ่งเนี่ยโยมก็ปล่อยให้อยู่ตรงนั้นไหมคะหรือว่า
ปล่อยมันไปแสงสว่างไม่ต้องมาเอาเป็นอารมณ์ที่ตัวของเรา
Geoff, what is your personal sort of inclination on the rate of decline of the true Dhamma? There's the counterfeit Dhamma that seems to be developing some serious momentum. There's misinformation, disinformation, there's fake news. It's pretty significant. And I figured that you, of all people, would have your finger on the pulse, given how much you've translated, how much true Dhamma you've disseminated, to be able to get a picture of its decline.
Well, we don't have data on how much false Dharma there is now as opposed to in the past. And all we can say is, the Buddha said when false Dharma starts out, then all Dharma gets called into question. Just like when there's no counterfeit money, everybody trusts the money they get. When you know that there's counterfeit out there, you start to mistrust everything. And that happened a long time ago. And from that point, then it becomes, well, you have to use your own honesty and your own integrity to judge what really does seem to be genuine in raising the level of your mind, helping you to get over your greed, aversion, and delusion. And this becomes the responsibility of each person. And I've got to find, okay, what is generally going to get rid of my greed, aversion, delusion? And can't be responsible for everybody else out there. Because if you have too many fires out there and spend all your time putting out everybody else's fire, you don't get your own work done. So each of us has to say, okay, given my own self-honesty, I have to take that as my guide. As to when I listen to something, which part of me does it appeal to? Does it appeal to my lazy part or to my more diligent part? Does it appeal to my honest part or to my dishonest part? So each of us has to become our own sort of guarantee there. But you look back, every era of Buddhism ever since, say 200-300 years after the Buddha died, there's been a lot of counterfeit. But we don't have the statistics on how much there is. I did that textbook on the history of Buddhism, Buddhist religions. I found it a very depressing book. Because you see Buddhism going into different countries and they say, okay, we don't like it, prefer this. We don't like the Dharma here, we prefer this. And people keep baking up new versions all the time. But then you also get people who are saying, wait a minute, we're not here to make the Dharma fit our preconceived notions, we're here to change ourselves to fit into the Dharma. Those are the people who I find inspiring. You think about Ajahn Mun, you think about the Ven.Ajahns. So there are people like those, but we're lucky that this one particular tradition, forest tradition, actually came at a time when people could find out about it. There are other forest traditions in the past that existed, they flourished, disappeared, nobody else knew. Only a small group of people knew. So it's hard to trace how much more counterfeit there is. So it's up to each of us to figure out, okay, what kind of Dharma is best at getting rid of my greed, getting rid of my aversion, getting rid of my delusion, and then actually carrying through. Because what the Buddha said nourishes the Dharma is 1, commitment, and 2, reflection. You commit yourself to what seems to be the best, and then you reflect on it. And you have to be honest in your reflection. That's how you find the true Dharma.
Not sure what is semantic. Kathina is a galatan, meaning that you have a certain period to do that. Then about this dedication of merit. So when you are part of the congregation to rejoice with those who actually do this kathina, then you sort of also get the merit that maybe the host or those who participate dedicate the merit. But then what about, so my question is it synchronous or asynchronous, the dedication of merit? Because a lot of people do kathina, and then I saw them doing online, and I rejoice for them, but obviously it's not the time that they were doing that merit. I was
afterwards
having a bit of a lagging.
That's perfectly fine.
Oh, okay. So it doesn't have to be synchronous.
Doesn't have to be right at the same time, no. Yeah. And whether they dedicate it to you or not, but if you approve of it, then it's your merit. Because the more we appreciate the goodness of other people, the better we are. There's also a passage where the Buddha says those who actually do the merit and those who help, they may not be their own money, but they're helping with the process. Okay, they get the merit too. And the people who say, what a good thing that was that they did that, okay, that's their merit. But it feels a little bit more genuine when you say, okay, I'm going to do this myself.
So the first 5 precepts, to break them, so do you need to actually break them, or like intention matters as well?
With the 5 precepts, intention is all important. Now, if you happen to step on a bug but you didn't mean to, then it doesn't break the precept. Or if you say something that's false but you thought it was true, doesn't break the precept.
What if your intention is to break the precept, but you did it?
You didn't? The action didn't?
Yeah.
Then you say, why the hell do I want to break a precept?
Well, so you fantasize about stealing the fancy car from someone.
Okay. Well, the problem with that is that it creates kind of a rut in your mind. You know what ruts are like. You get into the rut, and then you can't get out. Or it's hard to get out.
Another question about the 5 precepts. The precept of stealing, taking what's not yours. I now work in a hospital. We have those sandwiches for patients. But everyone work there would just eat the sandwiches because it's so. They think it's mine, and I mean I've eaten them as well. But that's not given to me by the hospital. It's meant for the patient, but everybody's eating them on a daily basis. To be honest, I don't actually see much harm resulting from it, except that you're stealing.
Yeah.
Taking what's supposed to be for the patient.
Yeah. Right. The next time I go to a hospital, I'll think of you. This is why I have such miserable meals, because the staff is taking the sandwiches, so they have to make cheap sandwiches.
These sandwiches are actually made for the patients when they're
I know.
sleeping.
I know.
You should make your own intention not to touch it.
Yeah.
Make your own lunch.
I know, you're very hungry. Well, that's why it's not like you suddenly discover, hey, this body gets hungry every now and then. What do I do? No. You can take a lunch.
But everyone take it for granted. They think it's okay to do it.
I know, they think it's okay, but you don't have to think it's okay.
They think it's not okay for you.
Well, are there any tangible harm? I know it's not right to do it, but is there any tangible harm? I can see like killing someone.
Yeah, well, it's just that attitude that, I mean, this wasn't meant for me and they didn't want to give it to me, but I'm going to take it anyhow. That's the attitude behind stealing. Like I knew some people who lived it's a long kind of story, but in America, when you live in a college, when you study in a college, sometimes you go and live in private housing. And so this group had gotten a house in a poor area of the town. And so they wrote to, I think it was Maxwell House, and pretended to be people from the poor area of the town, saying that, I don't want to get any trouble, but I found some metal peelings inside my can of coffee. And I just wanted you to know. And Maxwell House sent them just this big present to sort of keep them quiet. And I kept thinking, you scumbugs.
I used to work in a hospital. They do, the catering department do bring food out, especially for us, but they do say it's for the staff, so we can eat them. It's not just them.
Well, people use, they steal medication.
Oh no, that's wrong.
Panadol.
That one, if you're sick, yes, you can go to the nurse manager in the house. saying you're not well. It's okay.
I'll stop doing that.
Okay, good. Because just because everybody does it doesn't mean it's right. Yeah, it doesn't mean you're right. Yeah. Yes.
The current, sorry, Ajahn, this is a question. The current society is actually encouraging us, I would say the layman, encourage us, for example, like self-centered, fight for your rights, and slowly all these habits will lead to high ego, self-ego. But at the same time, I'm aware that Buddhism actually teaching us to be selfless. So how can I balance that?
Okay, well, you have to figure out what's fair. And if something is not fair, you're perfectly within your rights to say, look, this is not fair. Now, the society may be organized in such a way that you cannot make it fair, in which case you say, okay, then I have to accept it. But you don't just give in to begin with. I mean, the Buddha doesn't say you accept everything. There's some things you accept, some things you don't accept. And as for trying to make the society a more fair place, you can say, well, I'm not doing this just for myself, but I'm also doing it for other people in my position. In which case that's your gift to other people in your position. Because social action can be a gift, and you treat it that way. But I mean, the whole thing about ego being bad, the Buddha never said your ego is bad. He's basically saying that you learn how to develop a healthy sense of self. That's responsible, that's capable, that's has good qualities. You have to develop that first before you can let it go. So, but if society's encouraging you to be selfish and just look after yourself, okay, there's something wrong with society. But you're saying, people who are in a position like me, who are also suffering from the same injustices that I'm suffering from, maybe we can get together and do something about it. That's considered a form of generosity. And you have to ask, and in all cases of generosity, ask yourself, okay, is this going to get in the way of my rest of my practice? Or is this going to, the fact that I'm actually learning how to be more proactive, is that's going to be more helpful down the line? So it's more complex than just being selfless or being selfish. Yeah.
Maybe for example, for instance, if let's say you're dealing with a person who do things wrongly, and how can you actually skillfully tell them, or even, it's hard to forgive people who actually they are the source of
the issue, yeah.
And they refuse to accept. So how do you have a skillful way to deal with it?
There's something called the Thai smile. The Thai smile. In other words, you say something really seriously, but you smile.
And then when you're not a smiley person, you don't have the intention of hurting or harming anyone, but your patient doesn't.
Go home and smile. Those muscles are not hard to develop. Come on. No, we're building a new building at the monastery right now, and the contractor is a young Chinese woman, and she's really strict with her subcontractors. But I've seen her when she's talking to the subcontractor. You got to do this, 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 and she smiles. A lot of it has to do with psychology. What would make this person, recognize what they're doing wrong? You have to think strategically. It's not just telling them that they're doing it wrong is not going to do it.
So I do smile when I tell that person, but I can feel I'm burning. I'm good. So is there any way you can advise?
Okay, well, just keep reminding yourself, you're doing this in a way, you want to do this in a way that actually helps that person see that they're doing something wrong and they can change their ways. So that your intention is, you intend to have goodwill for that person. That changes the energy. Basically, your attitude is, I'm doing this for your good. Because if you're doing this way, you're going to suffer down the line because of the way you're acting. And if I can help you see that, you will suffer because of your short-sightedness. And that's what a lot of this is. It's short-sightedness.
Ajahn, on the same point, sometimes in the workplace we see funny things happening, but sometimes I just tell myself it's not my place to tell them, so it's not mine. Like they will not receive from me, so I just kept quiet. It's like he will, like, why should I tell him?
Okay, well, again, this is when you feel that you are not the person to be doing this, and the question, who is? Go talk to that person.
Because if you talk to a person, then you create the animosity.
Okay, no, you try to find somebody who you think might be responsible. If you can't find anybody who's responsible, you say, okay, then there are certain things that are beyond me. But that's an easy thought to think. First think about, well, what could I do? Give it some thought.
Ajahn, my husband, at night, during sleep, he get nightmares. And he been making some like fighting kind of sounds going on, bit of an anger going on, so I give him a gentle rub. It's okay, then he'll be quiet, he'll turn and he'll be fine back to sleep. I wonder if he meditates, I wonder, is there anything else?
Before he goes, as he's lying in bed going to sleep, tell him to think thoughts of goodwill for all the beings in the world. That usually helps. And it won't be an absolute cure in all cases, but it helps create a better mind state as he goes into sleep.
And this, in addition to that, this can apply to anyone who's making ghostly noise during sleeping, like during the 2 to 4 a.m. time. You know, it's a matter of transfer of merits before sleeping.
Or just thoughts of goodwill, may all beings be happy. Ajahn Mun used to make a habit of, when he would wake up in the morning, spread goodwill in all directions. When he woke up from his nap in the afternoon, goodwill in all directions. At night, right before going to sleep, goodwill in all directions. And that kind of creates the framework for the practice.
I've got two questions. How does one heighten or improve their intuition? And second question on top of that is that how do you differentiate false thoughts and the so-called intuitive response, where you can't say that, okay, this is the right response, but sometimes what if it's a false thought? You know, because there's so many random thoughts coming in when making a decision or deciding on which path to take, A or B. So,
okay, you can't depend 100% on your intuition. You cannot depend 100% on your intuition. Even people who meditate and are psychic say that, you know, not everything they get in terms of information is correct. So again, Ajahn Mun's instructions to Ajahn Fuang, who did tend to be quite psychic, was one, when something comes up, it doesn't matter whether it seems really intuitive or whatever, you ask yourself, does this fall in line with the Dharma? And then, if it seems to fall in line with the Dharma, the second question is, if I act on this, what do I think the consequences are going to be? Now, if you have two choices in which it looks like both consequences are going to be good, it doesn't matter which one you choose. But as you're acting on that, you have to check the results. So even psychic people have to check the results. You can't just say, I'm going to go with my intuitions.
Just wondering about the forecasting future. You know, we know that there's prediction that the next Buddha is a Buddha Maitreya. That means it is like a written future, like that. The next Buddha definitely is a Buddha Maitreya. So my question is there anything called like a predestined future?
Well, there's some things that, I mean, your past karma creates tendencies, and some of those tendencies are really, really, really strong. Now, exactly how long it will take him, I don't know if that's been determined. to become Buddha. But the karmic tendencies are already in place. Now, other karmic tendencies are not quite so strong.
So nothing can be changed. It will be there.
If it's really strong tendency, okay, then it probably will happen. 9 times out of 10. The interesting thing was the Buddha himself said, what it was his knowledge of the future? His knowledge of the future was he would never be reborn. That was absolutely true. Because the conditions for his rebirth were no longer there. That much he knew for sure. Now all the other things, there's still a little bit of room for adjustment. Like how long the next Buddha is going to take, could take longer. We don't know.
So there is called that tendency.
That there's a tendency in the future, yeah. And some of the tendencies are stronger than others because the past karma is stronger.
Yeah, that's why when I read the story of the Buddha, like when Buddha Gautama before became Buddha, he said some Brahmin like this become Sumedho. Yeah. And also the prediction that okay, he will be a Buddha in the future. Right? And also the Devadatta, right? Because the bad karma, he now born in the very bad health. But the prediction is the future he will become a
private Buddha.
Pacheka
Buddha.
Yeah. That's why I'm thinking that why there's all this prediction if that means there is some that you say strong tendencies.
Some very strong tendencies, yeah. But the important thing about karma is that you look at your karma right now. Whatever your karma is in the past, you don't have to suffer from it. There are ways you can minimize the suffering. Like past bad karma will lead to bad results, but how strong those results are going to be depends on your state of mind now. So you work on your state of mind now, because you can't go back and change what you did. But if you create, you develop the Brahma Viharas, you train your mind so that it's not easily overcome by pleasure, not easily overcome by pain, then whatever results of past bad karma will be reduced. So focus on that. I'm beginning to run out of steam. So hope this has been useful.